Good morning, everyone. I'm Ray Pucci. I'm the president of the Delaware County Chamber of Commerce, and welcome to this morning's Chamber Connects program. By the way, we are recording this morning's program, and we're going to post it for viewing a little bit later on this morning on the Chamber's YouTube channel. And as folks who have registered for the program, we're going to be sending you all copies of this morning's program as well. In just a few minutes, we're going to connect with Jen Metzger, our former state senator and recent appointee to the New York State Cannabis Control Board. If you have some questions for Ms. Metzger, please post them in the chat box and we will try to get to at least some of them. Before I introduce Jen, let me update you a little bit on what your chamber has been doing for you. The Delaware County Chamber of Commerce, for those who are not as familiar with us as others, is a private, non-governmental, not-for-profit membership organization. We believe that healthy communities begin with healthy businesses by focusing on three key areas: community and economic development, advocacy, tourism promotion, and business engagement. Okay, 4 key areas. We partner with municipal leaders, community organizations, local companies to present a unified voice for business for the improvement of our communities. The Chamber just launched the Great Western Catskills Film Commission. I'm really excited about this. We've been talking about this for the last couple of years and finally have secured funds to launch it. The commission, which was approved in part back in 2020 with use of the Delaware County occupancy tax revenue, was created to develop the motion picture, television, advertising, and entertainment media industry here in Delaware County. The primary focus of the commission is to increase local employment opportunities and increase revenue for Delaware County businesses. The Film Commission website is live right now at greatwesterncatskillsfilmcommission.com. Potential crews, suppliers, production-related vendors are encouraged to submit contact information, which will then be used to assemble a resource guide. Anyone with potential filming locations is also encouraged to submit information there on the website. On a different subject, the New York State Comptroller recently released sales tax data for August, showing a 76% jump year over year during August in Delaware County. For the year, sales tax revenue is up 35%, and that's second in New York State, only to our neighbor in the south in Sullivan County, which is at 38%. So I think this news answers 2 significant questions that at the Chamber we've been talking about for the last year. One question that we always have is our tourism promotion program working? And 2, have all those people who we think have relocated here still here? And I think the answer to both of those questions is a resounding yes. It's pretty clear to me and my board and those in the tourism industry that investing in tourism promotion really pays huge dividends. One other note before I introduce Jen. With the ever-changing news affecting businesses that's coming out of Albany and coming out of Washington, having reliable and accurate information that you can use for your business has never been more important. The Chamber is your one source for assistance, ideas, inspiration, and most of all, the facts. If you're not already a member, what are you waiting for? Membership truly is an investment in your business every single day. Many of you who are on today's program are not yet members of the Delaware County Chamber. I hope you'll consider the benefits of membership. Annual dues start at just $99 a year. Of course, information about membership, chamber news, registration for events, Where else? DelawareCounty.org is where you can go to get all that information. Now, I'm pleased to introduce to you a friend of the chamber and a friend to Delaware County to you this morning as our featured speaker. Jen Metzger was elected to the New York State Senate in 2018 to represent the 42nd District, which includes several towns here in Delaware County. Jen Metzger has always been committed to improving the lives and opportunities of those she has represented. While Senator, Jen's legislative accomplishments and community-level initiatives spanned a whole range of issues, including environmental protection, agriculture, education, health, and broadband access. She worked as the public affairs coordinator for the United Nations Association in New York. Prior to her tenure as state senator, Jen served for over a decade in local government in the town of Rosendale and co-founded and directed Citizens for Local Power, an organization dedicated to fighting unfair utility rates and practices and helping communities shift to a locally based clean energy economy. While in the Senate, Jen introduced nearly 20 bills as agriculture chair, 9 of which were signed into law, including nation-leading legislation creating a framework for production, processing, and the sale of hemp and CBD products. Now she's serving as an appointee to the Cannabis Control Board and is here today to talk about some of the framework for regulation in advance of permitted statewide cannabis sales. Jen, welcome to Chamber Connects program this morning. Good to see you again.
It's great to see you, Ray. Thank you and the Chamber so much for having me on this morning.
Well, I know you have a Cannabis Control Board meeting later today, and so I appreciate that you're taking the time to spend with us this morning. First, let's start with just a little background. The state legislature passed the Marijuana Regulation and Taxation Act, known as MRTA. I love the fact that legislators feel the need to create new words. They did that earlier in their session this year, and then Governor Cuomo signed the legislation into law back in March, and that legalized adult use cannabis in New York State. The legislation also creates a new Office for Cannabis Management that's governed by a Cannabis Control Board, of which you are now a member to oversee and implement the law. I'd like to talk first about what's actually in the law. Many people, including some of our local elected officials, say there are just no rules. And when I spend just a few minutes looking at the Office of Cannabis Management website, I see a rather robust set of policies that are already in place, including a dozen different types of licenses that will be authorized under the law. Would you spend a few minutes outlining what some of those licenses are for us?
Sure. Well, let me just take a step back, and the MRTA, for short, is like a 128-page law. So there is a lot in there, and we can't possibly unpack it all today. But just, kind of as an overview, it really shifts cannabis policy toward a public health framework grounded on the principles of public safety, social justice, and economic development. While adult use cannabis is new to New York, we already have 2 other cannabis programs in place here, the medical cannabis and cannabinoid hemp, or CBD as it's commonly known, those 2 programs. And New York's law, I think we're like the 17th or 18th state to legalize adult use, but New York's is the first to consolidate all 3 of these cannabis programs, hemp, medical cannabis, and adult use cannabis, under one roof in the Office of Cannabis Management, as you mentioned. And I think this consolidated framework will help New York create a more cohesive and effective cannabis program from both a regulatory and economic perspective. Having done a lot of work on hemp when I was Senate Agriculture Chair, including sponsoring the legislation with Donna Lopardo, creating New York's CBD hemp program. I'm thrilled to be working on the full suite of programs now on the regulatory and licensing side. And I think it offers enormous opportunities for New York farmers and small businesses, and look forward to working with stakeholders in building the industry. As you mentioned, there are many categories of licenses. These include cultivator licenses, nursery licenses, testing laboratory licenses, processors, distributors, retailers, micro businesses, and cooperatives. Most of these are different parts of the supply chain and are pretty self-explanatory. But I just want to mention that what's unique about the adult use program is it is prohibited. The law prohibits vertical integration. So you can't have, a cultivator, and you can't have licenses along the supply chain and also have a retail license. And that's really important. A main theme of this legislation is to make sure that we have a competitive market, a diverse market that offers opportunities to small businesses and small farms, to the full diversity of New York businesses at different scales. In other states, and countries for that matter, it's been the case that sort of these larger interstate companies, they're highly capitalized, multi-million-dollar companies, have real advantages and they're vertically integrated and can dominate the market. So that vertical integration is not allowed here, and it's all about creating a competitive market. I just want to say something about the micro business license, because that is the one type of license that allows for vertical integration, but it's at such a small scale that doesn't present that concern about market dominance. And that's kind of like, I think of it as analogous to like a seed to sale kind of craft business, like we have a thriving craft beverage industry here in New York. There's also cooperative licenses, and that's that can be a producers cooperative, like a group of farms. It could be a worker-owned cooperative, a member-owned cooperative, and they're just to get a cooperative license, you just have to adhere to the principles of cooperative businesses. But that they can be helpful too in enabling the pooling of resources to get into this market. So I'll leave it there.
Well, Jen, I want to go back to that idea of that micro enterprise license, because I think that's a critical one here and especially here in Delaware County. So does that mean that if a municipality and if a township opts out, that means that our farmers really are affected, because that would then mean that micro enterprise license would not be available to them?
That is a really good question, Ray. And actually, it hasn't come up yet, but yeah, if you're prohibiting retail sales,
Right.
retail is part of the micro business. So yes, it seems to me you'd be effectively prohibiting that. And as you said, it is the micro business license is really, a particularly good opportunity for, our small, farm businesses and the like. So yes.
Yeah, because, if they're just permitted to grow but not sell, I've been
Right.
told by some retailers or by some farmers, that means that they're going to be leaving about 60% of the profit on the table.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it definitely, I've just, in some research I've done in other states, hearing from farmers in California and elsewhere, being able to really, operate at all those levels of this, all parts of the supply chain are really important for the farmers. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a huge source of economic opportunity for them. So yeah.
I see in the on the Office for Cannabis Control website that there are limits on how many dispensary licenses, as an example,
Yeah.
that a person can own. Is the thinking behind that just what you were talking about, to make sure that it's widely distributed?
Exactly. So we don't want a few giant companies dominating the market. And by setting that limit of 3 adult use retail dispensary licenses, um, per applicant, that helps to ensure that we have a competitive market. Plus, there's a built-in review process in the law. Licenses, um, basically we will be review when licenses are up for renewal. We'll be assessing the market after 2 years. We'll be looking at the market, making sure that it's competitive, and that we're not seeing this kind of market dominance.
Whoops. Um, Social and economic equity concerns were a major focus of the legislation. Would you tell us a little bit more about that goal to award 50% of the adult use licenses to social and economic equity applicants?
Sure. So New York's law was really distinctive in putting social equity, social and economic equity so front and center in the law, and then backing that commitment up with provisions to meet those goals. A main goal of the law is to provide new economic opportunities in the legal market to those who have been disproportionately impacted by prohibition or come from communities that have been disproportionately harmed. It also seeks to provide opportunities to folks who don't necessarily participate on an equal footing in the economy. That includes women and minority-owned businesses, service-disabled veterans, and distressed farmers. Under the law, the Cannabis Control Board is to prioritize these applicants when granting licenses. And as you mentioned, the law sets as a goal awarding half of all licenses to these social and economic equity applicants. Priority licensing is important, but it's not enough. You also have to have you have to have experience, resources, and means to start a business. So the law also requires that we establish a business incubator program to provide direct support in the form of counseling services, education, small business coaching, financial planning, and compliance assistance. And I really think that providing this support is going to be critical to the success of the program. All of this is going to be laid out in the social and economic equity plan that we're required to develop according to the law, with the help of a chief equity officer. We just appointed the chief equity officer at our first meeting the week before last, Jason Starr. And that's a main thrust of this law.
Yeah, Jen, I know you're still very early in the process. But where is the state right now in that permitting process, and when might people expect that licenses? When will the application period, and when will licenses be issued?
Boy, I wish I had a good answer for you, Ray. So the Cannabis Control Board, it was expected that it would be appointed in March or April, like soon after the law, it was signed into law. But the previous governor just didn't get to those appointments.
There were distractions, weren't there?
Yes, there were distractions. But as soon as Governor Hochul came in, she really got to it. She appointed the chair and the executive director of the Office of Cannabis Management, and then the other appointments quickly followed. And so now we're up and going. As you said, we had our first meeting 2 weeks ago. And we really kind of hit the ground running. At the first meeting, we expanded the medical program, but well, I'll talk about that in a bit. But basically, the law, it was kind of envisioned that it would take 18 months for regulations to be finalized, which is actually that whole process of and getting a dispensary up, the first dispensary is operational. That was a more aggressive timeline than has occurred in other states. But we're really looking now at, how can we make up some of the lost time? It's been 6 months, right, since the law was passed. And so I don't have an answer for you, but I can tell you that we're moving at a good clip.
Great, great. And this may fall into that same kind of category. The Delaware County Economic Development Office, excuse me, has been approached already by a few people who are interested in building grow facilities here in Delaware County. Do you have any sense what type of grow facility the control board may prefer? We're hearing, right now everything is rumor that the control board is going to prefer a completely indoor facility. And then others are saying, no, that's too much energy consumption. They want something that's going to be strictly outdoors. Any sense of that?
Well, we haven't done those regulations yet. So I can't give you a specific answer about that. But what I can tell you is that it is both. It will be both indoor and outdoor, and I'm a big supporter of outdoor cultivation, because just personally, I think first of all, it requires less energy. Its environmental impacts in that respect are less, but also it's less capital intensive than indoor grow. It's very expensive to create an indoor grow facility. But when we say indoor, also, we have to distinguish between there's, kind of like the windowless warehouse model, but there's also greenhouses, which many farmers have and are already using. And you can grow in greenhouses, you can grow outdoors, hoop houses, or indoors. So we're going to make sure that we support the full range of options, and I think that is going to be most beneficial to New York's agricultural and small businesses as well, to do it that way.
And we've been getting, Lillian has been screening questions from the chat box, and please keep them coming. And it's obvious that several folks who are on the call today are interested in opening or investing in some type of growing or retail cannabis operation. What do you think they can expect from the Office of Cannabis Management over the next several months as you're starting to put things together?
Right. Well, I can tell you, as I said, we already hit the ground running, and sort of the order of things is partly, kind of spelled out in the law. As I said, at our first meeting, we expanded the medical cannabis program, including allowing the sale of flower. That's flower, FLOWER, not the kind you bake in a cake. I saw an article in a newspaper reporting on that meeting, and they had the cake baking flour in the article. But anyway, that's important for reducing the costs for medical cannabis patients. And a lot of the changes we made were about that. Were about trying to reduce the costs and also expand access to it. Later today, at our cannabis board meeting, we'll be taking up regulations governing home cultivation of medical cannabis. The reason we're taking this up today is because it's the first deadline in the law that we're required to meet. And so, please look for those regulations. It's going to be all regulations have to go through the state's, SAPA process, which is, there's a 60-day public comment period. So, when those are up and open for public comment, I really encourage folks to take a look at them and provide your input. So after, sort of next on the agenda, we're going to be taking up the hemp regulations, which are in draft form. We need to get those regulations done as well. The CBD industry is important to the hemp industry too, and offering opportunities to our businesses. And then we'll get to the adult use. So at the same time, while all of this is happening, we are, developing, as I mentioned before, the social and economic equity plan. We're also, developing, a public education and health campaign around this as well. So there are a lot of moving parts to this program, but we're excited to get going on it.
A lot of moving parts all at the same time.
Yeah, all at the same time, exactly.
One of the questions that just came in, and I want to go back just for a moment to the micro business licenses or the micro enterprise license. Someone asked, would cannabis consumption sites or lounges be included under the micro business license? The retail piece would that be as well? I hadn't thought about that before.
Yeah, that's a good question. On-site consumption licenses, that is, you do have to get a separate license for that. And whether that can be I don't know. I would have to get back to you all.
Okay, that's great.
Share that. That question hasn't come up. It's a very good question. And I can say that if it is permissible, you'd still have to apply for a separate on-site consumption license.
Okay, it would be,
and of course your community has to also not have opted out of that.
Well, that's
either of those. Yeah,
that is a key piece, isn't it? But it would be something similar to someone going to a winery or any kind of craft beverage, and I guess doing a little sampling.
Yeah.
Let's spend a few minutes talking about taxation. That's a area of great interest to a lot of folks right now. And the potential revenue to local municipalities, as well as to the state of New York. Now, the legislation lays out in great detail the amount of taxes that are imposed on the distributor based on the milligrams of total THC in the product. And Jen, we don't need to jump into those weeds, pardon the pun, this morning. But what I am interested in is exploring more about those excise taxes that would be imposed by the retailer to the consumer, that would end up in the pockets of local towns, villages, county, and state. Would you explain those a little bit?
Sure. So, there's a 4% excise tax charged at the local level. 75% of that will go to the local governments, and 25% goes to the county. And again, this is to be clear, that will only be the case. Your community will only see that revenue if you haven't opted out of dispensaries. So Massachusetts, just across the border, those towns have really seeing this new industry boosting their coffers at the local level. I did want to just mention that all the rest of the revenue that's collected at the state level, um, the law is very specific about how that money is to be spent, and I want to point out, this is an important point, that it's all basically being reinvested in our communities. 40% of it goes into a community reinvestment fund. That's actually targeted specifically at communities that have been disproportionately impacted or harmed by prohibition. Another 20% goes into treatment program, prevention and treatment of substance use disorder programs. Will be a very important source of additional revenue, for county programs and local programs in that area. And then the remainder, the remaining 40%, and this is all after administrative costs of the program are covered, but the remaining 40% goes into our public schools. So localities will get the direct kind of fiscal benefits of that local 4% excise tax, but our communities will also see the revenue, see the benefits of that revenue coming right back into their communities.
And that state piece that's coming back would be regardless of whether they opted in or opted out. The difference
That's
would be
correct.
that they wouldn't get that direct piece, if you will.
That's right.
Jen, you served on your town board there in Rosendale, so you understand very well the concerns of local governments. What advice would you offer to town and village officials who are considering right now whether to opt out of permitting adult use cannabis sales in their communities?
I feel very strongly that every community has to make that decision. And that's speaking as someone that was in local government and very much understands the importance of, local control and understanding your own community and making those decisions based on what you feel are right for your community. I don't want to presuppose anything. I actually, when I was this law was passed after I left the Senate, but when I was, I definitely supported communities having the ability to make this decision themselves when I was in the Senate and the law was being discussed. So I'll leave it at that. But I think I think it's important for communities, for community members to weigh in to this decision and make your voices heard with your local governments about that. But really it's a local decision that I don't want to presume to advise.
Can municipalities opt out of consumption sites but can include retail sales?
Yes, and in fact, some I know of some communities in Sullivan County that have done that. It's been a real mix across the board. There are, some towns are, there are towns that are open arms. There are towns that are opting out of just consumption sites. There are some towns that are opting out of both. So it's a mix.
Some of our towns some of our municipalities, towns and villages have already chosen to opt out, or the village and town boards have out of both retail and consumption. And there are folks in those municipalities, and I know this is a question that came up, so I know some of them are on our call this morning, who are interested in seeing that public referendum. Is there any support from the Cannabis Control Board referendum templates or the like to help guide communities who have opted out to overturn those local laws?
There is no guidance specifically from the Office of Cannabis Management on that. I mean, that is, they obviously people should talk with their municipal officials, and their town attorney, can walk, municipal officials through that process. They're all familiar with it. But I do want to say that, whatever happens this year, local governments also have the ability to opt back in. And I've heard a few local governments representatives, this just very informally, but have said to me that it wasn't like they were opposed to it, but they just wanted to have the option, basically. But yeah, I mean, that's again, like, we can't offer legal advice
Sure.
on that, but it's up to the communities to sort of figure that out.
Let's talk about those. You've mentioned the concerns of local municipalities and the board members, and will local municipalities have some discretion in citing those businesses or in regulating those hours of operation if they do choose
Yes.
not to opt out?
Absolutely. Absolutely. They will have their traditional authority over planning and zoning, location, hours of operation, and the like. That is all within their control. Additionally, any applicant anyone thinking of opening a dispensary, the law requires that they provide, significant advance notification. I can't remember the exact number of days,
Okay.
but they have to provide advance notification to the municipality, and the municipality has the opportunity to, provide comments to the control board on that application. So, there are multiple ways in which local governments can have an influence over, these businesses coming to their towns.
And yeah, it sounds like a lot of control, certainly more than if we wanted to open up a delicatessen or something like that.
Right.
Um,
And I also want to be clear that this is only, you can only opt out of the dispensary and, on-site consumption lounges. You cannot opt out of cultivation. You cannot opt out of processing. None of that. Again, all of those things are still, all of those, stages of the supply chain, those businesses still have to go through the regular, planning board review process, but they can't opt out of those.
okay. Now, some have expressed concerns about security at those retail and grow facilities. Are those some of the issues that are being addressed right now in policy that would govern those licensing and permits?
So yes, I mean, security, making sure though, the safety and security are high priorities of the board and the
Yeah,
Office of Cannabis Management. And that is all going to be addressed as part of the regulatory process. And in addition, applicants are required by the law to show that they can maintain effective security and control to prevent diversion, abuse, and other illegal conduct relating to cannabis. And we already have security. The security provisions are already, in place for the medical program. But yes, this is a priority, and this will definitely be part of the regulations.
that's great to hear. We've also have heard that some local municipal leaders are concerned about unfunded mandates that may come along with the sales. Things like the requirement for establishing a police department to patrol a retail dispensary. Can you tell us, are there going to be any of those types of unfunded mandates associated with retail cannabis dispensaries that local municipalities are going to have to shoulder?
No. And again, as a former local elected person, I'm very sensitive to the unfunded mandates. But there are no unfunded mandates associated with the retail dispensaries. We're operating a state-run program, and we'll work in partnership with local governments to ensure effective implementation. And again, as I mentioned earlier, you'll be seeing additional revenues and other state localities in other states like Massachusetts have seen an increase in revenues. So that's important to keep in mind. The Office of Cannabis Management will be undertaking an extensive public health and safety campaign, and will be reaching out to localities and working with them. Just for example, the Governor's Traffic Committee, which works in partnership with municipalities to support safe rules, and it plays a central role in coordinating the state's impaired driving program. We'll have additional funds and training resources available for localities to support DRE officers. These are officers that are drug recognition experts trained to recognize impairment in driving. So there will be additional resources available if localities, choose to take advantage of it.
So a lot of those concerns that folks are saying about driving while impaired, making certain that law enforcement officers have the tools that they need to identify that potential for breaking laws, that's all part of what the Cannabis Control Board is looking at, and
Absolutely.
the state portion of those excise tax will be used to help support those efforts. Is that what you're saying?
Well, not the local excise tax. I mean, we will be.
No, the state portion.
Right. Yes. The state. Yes, those will be. That is state funded and comes right out of the operating expenses that are paid for through cannabis revenues. But yeah, there are very specific provisions in the law, providing support to local law enforcement for enhanced field testing techniques, and again, funding for the DRE program and the like. And the law also requires the Department of Health to study and certify a saliva test as well. So,
great.
Ray, can I ask you a question? Ray, it's Todd.
Sure.
Oh, sorry. If you were going to say something, go ahead.
Nope. Go ahead, Todd.
Hi, Jen. Thanks for joining us. I have a question about the licenses and the quantities, because it's a question I've been asked a lot from people. So we understand the equity part and the social justice part of how things will be apportioned that way. The concern I've heard from a lot of people, because it's a long, I've own a farm distillery, so it was a multi-year process, not a multi-month process, to go from planning to financing to licensing to being finally open. So is there, I know you don't have the specific numbers thought out or anything yet, but what's the guiding principle in terms of how the licenses are going to be limited? Is it regional? Is it, in other words, how quickly will people need to move in order to be able to position their small farm to have maybe one of the micro licenses, or will they be crowded out if they aren't the first 5 applicants for their region or what have you? What's the thinking on that?
So there, I had, it's so one of the issues with doing this so early in the process is I don't have a lot of those answers, because we still have to figure them out. I do want to mention that, I had mentioned that one category of license was distressed farmer. One category of social equity applicant are distressed farmers. What that means still has to be really kind of further defined by the control board, but in the law, at least, there are small farmers that have, operated at losses. There's very general criteria. But in terms of the control board, has authority to, set the number of licenses that will be rolled out, the size of, the canopy or square footage, like how much can be produced, like a lot of the details of the business. But what I would suggest, again, the law is really meant to support our farms, our small businesses, and I think you should take that very seriously. I take it very seriously, and we want to make sure that you can succeed. And I think it's good to start, if you're interested, to start thinking about your business plan, for that, and just preparing, being prepared once the licenses roll out. But the timing, it's a big question. I would love to see, farmers being able to get plant seeds in the ground this growing season, but we have to get the regulations done, so.
Jen, while we're talking about,
I can come back later in the process with more answers.
while we're talking about those types of regulations, one of the questions that came in is the Cannabis Control Board, are you going to create, or are you considering creating regulations for events that are cannabis centered?
There is an events-based license. Again, the licenses all have to be, the details of those licenses have to be figured out, but that is one of the types of licenses that is in the law. So yes.
Great. Let's spend a minute talking about the medical dispensaries that are already operating. Are they going to be able to sell adult use cannabis at the retail level, in addition to the medical?
Yeah, so it's up to the board to determine that, whether the company, and just so I don't know how well people know the medical cannabis business, but they're referred to under the law as registered organizations. Those are the companies that have licenses to sell medical cannabis in New York. It is, there are 10 companies, or 10 registered organizations currently operating in New York. We're going to be expanding that number too, actually expanding the medical program, and expanding their medical dispensaries too, into communities that have been underserved. But the board ultimately is going to decide how, if, how, and when they participate in the adult use market. And if they're allowed to participate, the law provides for up to 3 co-located adult use dispensaries per license. So, I mean, like other types of applicants, they can't have more than 3, but they can co-locate at their existing medical dispensaries. If this is, again, this all has to be figured out in the regulations.
Right. Some of our viewers are concerned about the effects of smoke and secondhand smoke. Do the regulations as they stand now, or as they may be promulgated, prohibit smoking similar to tobacco use that are regulated by the Clean Air Act?
So it's basically the same. I mean, you can't smoke in any areas. You can't smoke cannabis in areas where you can't smoke, period.
Smoking is smoking.
Smoking's prohibited. Smoking's prohibited. And yeah, and landlords that prohibit smoking as part of their lease, they can, I mean, cannabis is included. So it's basically the same laws apply.
Jen, thank you so much for spending some time with us this morning. For those who are interested in learning more about the process, how can they get in contact, or how can folks find out more information, the facts about this process?
Well, I encourage people to sign up and get on the mailing list of the Office of Cannabis Management. And you can go, just Google New York State Office of Cannabis Management, go to the website, and sign up, and you'll be kept in the loop. You'll be kept. So that's really the best way. And feel free to reach out to me as well. But yeah, that's the best way to stay on top of it.
Excellent. Jen, thank you so much for spending time with all of us this morning.
Thanks so much for inviting me. I really appreciate it. It's great to see you again.
It's good to see you again. We all wish you great success on this Cannabis Control Board. You have a lot of work to do, and a lot of work to accomplish in a relatively short period of time. But
we'll be busy.
I wish you great success. I hope that we can have you come back a little bit later on in the
down the road. Once you can do the before and after.
I look forward to that. That'd be great.
Right.
Jen,
Take
thank
care.
you so much. Good luck.
Okay, thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye. And thank you for everyone for joining us this morning. I hope we provided you with some of the facts upon which you can make some rational decisions. The Chamber continues to support, advocate, and defend all legal business here in Delaware County. We've been criticized for our public position on cannabis sales as a legal business, but for us, honestly, this is really a matter of principle. We don't choose which businesses to support. We support all of our businesses here in Delaware County. And remember, at the Delaware County Chamber of Commerce and delawarecounty.org, we are stronger together. We hope to see you all next time on our next Chamber Connects program. Thanks for joining us, everybody.